mega deal of the year in the retail space. Reliance Industries has officially taken over the retail businesses of the Future Group. They're calling it a slump sale. Effectively, it means that all of the businesses have been bundled up, but the company has not been bought. It's like a bulk sale in a sense, and that has taken place for just about 27,000 crore rupees. Now, what does this mean effectively? It means all of the very well-known Future Group brands, your formats like your Big Bazaar, FBB, Central, etc. now go to Reliance Retail. Reliance Retail becomes a behemoth in the organized retail space. Quite a few questions emerge from this. One, are we going to see the kind of shake-up in the retail space like we saw when Reliance decided to enter the telecom space like Jio? Remember what happened after that? Can we see a similar shake-up in the space? Secondly, what happens to Mr. Biani and the Future Group's plan? What next for them? What are the different kind of changes we'll see in the entire sector? To speak on this today, I'm joined by, I think this is possibly the best group of people to be able to talk on this subject today. So very proud to welcome on the show Mr. Arvind Singhal, Chairman and MD Technopak Advisors, Mr. Pankaj Jaju, Founder and CEO of Metta Capital Advisors. And by the way, Mr. Jaju was very much part of that deal. I don't know how much he'll speak about it, but he's had a ringside view to everything. Mr. Lalit Agarwal, CMD of V-Mart Retail, joins us on the show this evening, as does Mr. Harminder Sahni, founder and MD of Wazir Advisors. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. Mr. Jaju, let me come to you first, and to the extent that you can share details with us. Can you give us an idea of what really happens to the Future Group entities as we know it from here on?
Hi Tamanna, I'm going to be speaking less on the transaction since I was part of it. The Future Group enterprise, the Future Group entities will all merge into Future Enterprises. So you will have Future Lifestyle, Future Retail, Future Supply Chain, Future Market Network, and Future Consumer merging into Future Enterprises. And after sale of the business, Future Enterprises will become an FMCG and an integrated fashion sourcing and merchandising company. And of course, it will have some stake in its joint ventures with Generali for insurance and NTC Mills. So it will in effect become a FMCG and fashion company, fashion sourcing company.
So in effect, Mr. Biani goes back to his roots from a long time ago. Now, it's important to understand what actually happened with this deal, how it came about before we look at its impact on the business. And here, Mr. Singhal, I want to get some of your perspective. I was speaking to a few people today and they seem to suggest that yes, the whole Future Group was weighed down under debt. All of that trouble was definitely there. But it is the coronavirus pandemic that has hastened this situation where the crown jewels, so to speak, of the group, their very popular formats, had to be sold out and a reasonable exit given to the promoter family.
See, Tamanna, I'm not sure whether the challenges being faced by Future Group can be attributed to COVID or a coup de grace, so to say, because of COVID. I think the challenges have been well established and recorded in the media and otherwise. So I think it was a question of time, maybe sooner than later, or later than sooner in this case, whatever the case may have been, that a white knight had to be found for the Future Enterprises. I mean, it's a good business. If you see the revenues, you see the formats, you see the brands, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the business as such as far as consumers are concerned. So there is value in that business. It is just behind the scenes when you look into the balance sheet, retail requires continuous infusion of capital, not only for merchandise, but for refurbishment of your stores, expansion of the retail network itself. And if you're weighed down by your balance sheet for whatever reasons, then the business itself actually gets into some kind of a terminal decay. And I think this is what was happening, unfortunately, to Future Group's various businesses for the last at least 6 to 8 quarters, I would say. So COVID may have only hastened the decision, But COVID is not the one which actually led to a finality of the decision, if I may say so.
Yeah, that's I think a fair observation. Harminder Sahni, would you agree? How would you see this mega deal? Is this a case of Mr. Ambani rescuing Mr. Biani in the middle of a COVID situation, or at the end of it, has Mr. Ambani got a great deal?
I would agree with the latter. I think Mr. Ambani has got a great deal. I think last 20 years plus hard work of the Future Group, I think there have been a couple of near-death experiences in between also, and in between also they had to sell some assets. So they've carried it forward all the way till now. And I think, yes, it was built on the basis of debt, and that's where the whole challenge started. And I think that's they were getting into spin. But that's the story for many other businesses in India, right? So from a consumer point of view, great formats, great offerings, everybody, there will be millions of people who will remember that their first visit to an organized retail store must have been to one of the Future Group formats, right? So Reliance gets all that brand loyalty, customer loyalty, millions of consumers ready-made for them. And second thing which happens is that not only you are getting that all at a very reasonable price, secondly, you actually have gotten rid of one of the bigger competitors as well. So I think it's a double advantage which is coming to Reliance as of now, because if Future Group, if you were to agree that this deal was going to happen and it would have landed up with somebody else, then Reliance also had to not only have it, but also have to end up competing with them. And they are well-established retailer. Balance sheet consumer doesn't care about the balance sheet and profitability of a company. For them, it's a business. They visit and they transact and they enjoy and patronize. So I think given that, I think Reliance has got a great deal. And the overall contours of the deal which have come in the media, I would say even Mr. Biani has got a reasonable deal in the time it has come. So I think it's been, so people like Pankaj, they will know more details about what happened there. But I think given the environment as such, what we have seen, and lots of deals we have seen, and lots of deals which we have seen have not happened, and very good businesses like Jetaways have gone down the chute. So I think it's not only Mr. Biani, not Mr. Ambani. I think the economy overall, the banking ecosystem, and the overall retail ecosystem, everybody has got a, I would say, more than fair deal in this whole process.
Mr. Lalit Agarwal, as someone who is part of this ecosystem, how do you see the developments of the last few days, where you have a mega player like Reliance Retail come in and effectively hive off all the best bits of the Future Group, the original kings of retail?
Hey, good evening. This is certainly a very, very interesting time. And we have seen interesting journey in the retail for the last 2 decades. And this whole journey, I know, started for Biani ji also just early 2000 and or maybe late 90s. And this 2 decade has been very, very interesting for Indian organized retail as well as for every one of us. And he has been a pillar for our modern retail. And he's the guru of modern retail. So, but yeah, I think there are a lot of things that he did, he taught, he brought into the industry, and yes, it is now getting the baton is getting handed over to the bigger player and to the bigger conglomerate. So yeah, definitely, it's not a very great news for the industry as part of a single player getting too bigger and getting into a monopolistic kind of approach. Will not be really a bigger piece for the overall competition also, but yeah, definitely. Reliance coming in will certainly add bigger confidence to the consumer, to the vendors, to the investment community, and also add a lot of benefits to the employee people and people skills community, because there would have been a lot of job losses and there would have been some chaos which would have happened, which has got avoided, and there may be hundreds of reasons of get that happening. Corona can be one more, but yeah, definitely whatever has happened now. I think it is something which is come up as a savior, and there's definitely more and more which is going to come in, because anyway organized retail in India has been at a very small number as a part of the percentage of share. So there's a huge opportunity for everyone to grow, and Reliance is the one who can make it grow. So there would be some international retailer, but as our FDI rules doesn't allow anyone, so Reliance has taken over that role. and is trying to penetrate more and getting a more feel of the organized retail. And they deserve it. They are able to do it and they deserve it. So we are all happy. I think it's whatever happens for good. That's the approach that we need to take.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Whatever happens for the good or not. It's not the question. The question is what happens next. So in that line of thought, Mr. Jaju, about what happens next, I want you to focus a little bit about what happens next for Mr. Biyani before we come to what happens next for the industry as a whole and Reliance Retail as a whole. So Mr. Biyani effectively goes back, say, to what he was doing in the 90s, around when he started out, when he was manufacturing in FMCG and in fashion. He's going to start up again. Do you think that he will make a fresh start, try and look for new formats? And what is the sort of cautionary tale that comes out of this for anyone in the retail space today? Is one of those lessons from the whole endeavor and the whole situation that you have to calibrate how you expand and the amount of debt and leverage you get into?
Yeah, I think it's a fresh start for Mr. Biyani. He's a very resilient person. I've known him for last 2 decades, and he's gone through his ups and downs. And even in this transaction, this was a transaction which was quite a pragmatic kind of a transaction where he took the call and went ahead without any attachment, saying that, look, this is something that needs to be done. This is the demand of the hour. I think for him, he has an opportunity now to create a FMCG and a fashion business. There is a very strong base that Future Enterprises has with revenues of over 7,000 crore last year of the businesses that will be there, and that's not small. And growing that, and the opportunity in FMCG is anyways very large. The opportunity in fashion is very large, and I think if he can just focus on that, that can become quite large and valuable businesses. I think overall, from and learning for the industry or for entrepreneurs is that, and people like Arvind and Harminder, Lalit have all been part of this industry and they've seen it up close. This is a very long-term business which requires things to be done repetitively, simply, and take a very long-term view. I guess for entrepreneurs, that's a clear message that you need to take a very long-term view on the business and ensure it's gradually built up. I think that's a key lesson. And any business with large operating leverage, a combination of operating and financial leverages in times like this can really hurt. I think that's the key takeaway.
No, Tamanna, I think Jaju is, Pankaj is hesitating, and we all say ki pair utna hi pasaro jitni badi chadar hai. So I mean, don't spread out your legs too far. So yeah, definitely that's a lesson for every entrepreneur.
Tamanna, if I could come in, I have a slightly different take on this. So Mr. Biyani started somewhere around 20 years ago, and he's walking away with $1 billion. Sachin Bansal started 10 years ago, and he walked away with $1 billion. And how are we perceiving these two differently? He revolutionized the online retail. Mr. Biyani did that in the offline retail, right? Both were startups. Came from nowhere, right? One built it with the equity money which he raised, right, and burnt all of it. And other guy built it with debt money which he raised, very little equity. At the end of it, some larger player came in and acquired it. In case of one case, Walmart. In the other case is Reliance. And both the founders, they walked away with a serious amount of money for themselves. I think I see no difference between the two. And both have had their near-death experiences. Both of them had those experiences where one person is unable to service the debt. On the other side, the other team was not able to raise next round of equity. And they were about to go down. So that happens in the business. So I think the message for the entrepreneurs is that dream big, go after the bigger opportunities. And the rest you should just sincerely work hard on that and see how it happens. Because I think both of them were entrepreneurs and both of them were very successful entrepreneurs.
And the fact is, and the fact is, it would be foolhardy to write off Mr. Biani at any given point, considering what he has built. Okay, let's come to the matter at hand. What happens to the retail space? Are we going to see a redux of what Reliance did to the telecom space when it entered? Remember, retail is a very different ball game. 88% of the whole sector is still unorganized, but there are many biggies trying to change that, and it's not just Reliance. If you look at online, then everyone is in it, right? There's Amazon, there's Walmart, everyone's got a finger in their pie. Let me come to Mr. Singhal with this question. What do you think happens to the organized retail space with the power and sort of the firepower that Reliance brings, and the brand recognition of a future group?
So let me first answer from a Reliance perspective, Tamanna. When you look into the core competence of Reliance Industries, till recently it has been in setting up mega projects very efficiently, doing a very good job in executing those projects and maintaining whatever investments are required to make sure that you are ahead of time. Retail is fundamentally different. You have to delight your customer every single day. You have to delight, in this case, hundreds of millions of customers, if not every day, but every month. I think it takes a lot of effort to do so. Customers can be very fickle. Customers, if they are unhappy about something, they don't care about how big you are in terms of turnover. You see that in the US, if you take one example, some of the most iconic retailers have fallen by the wayside because for some reason, customers were not very comfortable shopping there. It's not only the balance sheet part. I think it's a very tough task for Reliance to continue to delight the customers at the scale at which they are. We should not automatically assume that they can take the market share for granted. Because in retail, at least nowhere in the world, almost any retailer can do so, number one. Number two, you rightly said a short while ago, 88% of the market is still with the mom and pop stores. I would not call them unorganized. I would just say independent retail outlets. Leave aside today's brilliant GDP numbers, but maybe 6 quarters from now, India will hopefully go back to at least some kind of a positive growth. Consumption story will be back on track. And growth opportunities, even for the current existing modern retail players, will come from not only taking some business from the traditional retail, but also from the overall consumption growth in India. So I do not see this any kind of a death knell or a serious warning sign for other retailers. The only message there is like this, that look, try to delight your customer if you can even more, because the biggest guy in town has a much bigger task to be able to do so. And if you're able to delight your customer, delight means not only low prices, delight has got multiple connotations. Then you can actually have a very good business for yourself. You don't have to chase
really
becoming a 200,000 crore business.
I actually want... Yes, I actually want to expand on a point that Arvind is making over here. For all its might, the actual customer interaction and customer facing businesses of Reliance have not necessarily been on top of the heap in terms of either feedback or customer experience, etc., etc. Do you agree with that, Harminder? That this is going to be a bit of a challenge, and this is where they will perhaps gain from the future experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very valid point, that consumer in this case is the king and the queen and everything else. You are just there to serve that. Retail at the end of it is a trading business. The IP which you control in that is very, very limited. You are dependent on lots of factors at the back end. And then at the front end, you are dealing with somebody very fickle-minded who can just pass by and go to the next store, or who can go and choose to shop somewhere else today just because they don't feel like driving another half a kilometer. And I think all those variables make retail as a very, very difficult business to have. And even if you have delighted the consumer as good as you delighted them yesterday, somebody else has done a slightly better job today, right? And that's where you lose. So it's not only about yourself, because as a retailer, it's not the brand, it's not the product, it's not the unique features of a product basis which consumer is shopping with you. It's something else they are shopping with you for. And I think that's where the challenge lies clearly. And that's the reason I think a company like Reliance, who has never acquired too many businesses in India, and in recent times they have been doing on the technology side and somewhere else, But on this particular business in which they are the largest anyway, why did they think of acquiring something here? Because again, they value that building this business is difficult, and the customer brand equity which Future Group has been able to build, I think that's the value, a lot more value which lies there. And I think it's not for the stock, it's not for the stores they have, it's not for the people they have. I think it's for the customer relationship which they have been able to build over years. I think that's the intangible asset for which Reliance has paid. And I hope so that they have thought about it. And I think that it connects very well with that part, that at the end of it, you own the consumer, you own a business, and you have the right to make some money out of it. So, yeah, that's true.
Yes. Mr. Jaju, how do you see the landscape evolving from here on? Who would be the major 3 or 4 big players?
I think the market is very large, and just to take on the point on competition and what it does to competition before I answer your question, reality is that for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've been talking about large retailers coming in, opening large stores, and the smaller independent retailers, as Arvind said, dying out. But reality is that in every nook and corner, every market, every neighborhood, you see new stores opening up and the independent retailer actually gearing up and facing that competition with a much better service to its customer. And hence, to answer your question, given that India is a market where consumption is growing by leaps and bounds, and like Harminder said, or Arvind said, when GDP growth comes back, you will find consumption coming back, because that's the way this economy is going to grow. And there's enough of an opportunity for everyone. In terms of large players, clearly Reliance is the largest retailer by leaps and bounds, miles ahead of everyone else after this transaction. But some of the other groups which are there, whether it's the in fashion, there are a few groups which are there. In largely the Landmark Group, which would probably be large, the Aditya Birla Group, which would be large. Lalit is sitting here. He runs a very successful fashion business, which is delighting its customers in value fashion. So I think there are various groups which have created their own niche and service offering, and which will continue to flourish. And then you've got V-Mart on the other side in food and grocery retail. My belief is that there will be space for even more players to enter. So I'm honestly not thinking of this as being the death knell for the industry, but actually this will only, as larger and bigger players come in, the entire retail ecosystem will develop and become stronger. And that will allow more and more retailers to come in and, specialize in different forms.
Absolutely. That's actually one big learning, that unlike the telecom space where you have a finite material like spectrum, here anyone can be a retailer if you decide to make something or procure something and sell it anywhere you want. Mr. Agarwal, what is the key message you take away, and what message would you like to leave at the end of this discussion? There's room for everyone to grow?
Yeah, definitely, Tamanna. The market is so large and it's ever growing, and we have not tested the real consumption spirit and the youth population, the young family, and this small town. The markets are definitely it's a bomb. It's a bomb which will explode and definitely explode. And we have all got opportunities. All these larger players will only teach us more about the organized retail, invest more in the business, bring in more capability, more skill, more resources, develop more technology, set up or scale up those vendor base which is required for this industry to grow. Have people ecosystem around us, and I know definitely there is a huge scope. It's all about I think retail is always good and has always been good. It's all about retailer. How do you serve it well? How do you manage your own pieces? How do you set up those jigsaw puzzles so that you don't get confused in yourself? Because this doesn't have any great rocket science. There is no real rocket science in doing this business. But it's all about internal controls, internal governance systems, organization structures, keeping your expertise with you and then growing. So I think there is definitely a huge scope. But yeah, we need to be patientful. We need to be watchful, and we need to really grow with a lot of consciousness, so that we don't end up losing something. And definitely someone will make money, someone will lose. But yeah, the show should run, the institution should run. That's the real message, I think.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Remember, the retail sector is one of the largest employers also in the economy. It's only good if this sector expands. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into what is a very, very interesting deal. But it's more than just the story of a deal. It's about two major personalities. It's about the economic growth of this country.